This is Aging Forward, a podcast from Mayo Clinic about the science behind healthy aging and longevity. Each episode, we explore new ways to take care of our long-term health, the health of our loved ones, and our community so we can all live longer and better. I'm Dr. Christina Chen, a geriatrician and internist at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. In this episode, we're talking about healing from trauma and understanding more about mental health issues in older adults. So today I have the honor of speaking with Gracia Do, who is an amazing licensed professional clinical counselor. She is certified in EMDR therapy, and she's a director of a behavioral health clinic here in town. She's been in practice for over 11 years across multiple age groups, from young adults to older adults and even with children, which I think is just so incredible. But her area of passion and specialty is in helping people with anxiety disorders, panic disorder, and with a particular focus on trauma therapy. So thanks so much, Gracia, for being here. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Dr. Chan. It's an honor to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you developed just this passion in helping people with their mental health and, in particular, healing from trauma?
What really drove me into this field was my personal experience dealing with depression at a very young age. At the time, I was a newly immigrant from Vietnam, trying to navigate the new culture, the new country. I was barely making it. It was difficult. At the same time, my parents went through divorce, and I felt like that experience really set me over the edge, making life seem much harder to live. And at the time, I had no access to mental health support. I didn't even know what it is that I was feeling except for feeling bad. I was socially isolated in my room a lot of time. I was quiet. So all those were signs of depression, but we did not know what it was at the time. I thought I was alone in this. Therefore, I didn't speak with anyone. But I was writing all of these feelings down in my little diary because I was feeling so overwhelmed with it. And that's how I get out of it. And once I get out of it, I was thinking back, how is anyone else dealing with all of these complex feelings? People who looked like me, people who were as young as I was. And that's what really drove me to go into mental health.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. What's the biggest difference that you see between young adults and older adults in terms of most common mental health conditions?
So mental health symptoms manifest differently in every individual, but the common presentations that I've seen in younger people are the changes in their mood and behaviors, presenting problems like lack of motivation or loss of interest in the things that used to bring them joy, behavioral issues like having problems at school with their peers, difficulty following expectation at home, body image issues, feeling bad about themselves and not feeling good enough. Those are the common presentation in younger people. As for older people, it manifests in a more disruption of their functioning, like work life, marriage life, depression, anxiety, panic attack, or even chemical dependency problems, domestic violence, right?
Are there specific life experiences that make someone more vulnerable to mental health manifestations later in life, whether it's chronic stress or traumatic experiences and abuse and all that? But are there ones that are most damaging in terms of this is going to lead to a higher risk of mental health manifestations later on in life?
Throughout my years of practicing, what I've noticed the most is that there's no single factor that would make someone more vulnerable than others, but it's usually a list of compounded factors that make someone struggles with mental health issues later in life. I'll narrow down to the three main ones that I've seen. The first one would be the unprocessed or unresolved trauma. When someone has unresolved trauma, the nervous system remains in the heightened state of alertness, making it very difficult for them to regulate their emotion, therefore harder to deal with daily stressors. Second one is the unmet emotional needs. When someone grew up in an environment where their feelings are not being validated or even dismissed, they lack these internal resources called resilience that would help them to navigate daily stressors. Third one, of course, we all know that the chronic stress, ongoing life stressor.
Yeah.
People who are struggling with lower economic status, if they have to worry about food, shelter, if they have money for bills, that makes them more vulnerable. When we combine all of these factors, it makes it almost unbearable to deal with, because when someone is flooded with all of these hormonal stress, it makes them more susceptible to mental health problems later.
So it sounds like it's not just one thing, but a multitude of things that may be happening at the same time or over and over again in long durations that just causes a sense of overwhelmed experience, and then you don't have time to recover from it almost.
Right. It keeps stacking up one after another.
Right. Can you help us understand trauma a little bit and the impact on mental health? How do you define trauma, and what are some of the nuances behind that?
There are multiple ways to understand trauma, but I'll share with you the one that makes the most sense to me. Trauma is the unresolved or unprocessed disturbing experience that continues to impact how you feel, how you see yourself and others and the world around you. Single event traumas are something that are obvious, like sexual assault, a kidnap situation, or an earthquake. But trauma is not always big and obvious. It can be more subtle. There's something we call relational developmental trauma, is when people are growing up in an environment where your feelings are being dismissed, or that you don't have a voice to express yourself, or you're feeling afraid to express yourself. That's affecting the way you see yourself. That you're not important. I am not important enough for mom or dad to care about me or to spend time with me. I'm afraid to go to them. That really is detrimental as we grow up, because that will affect the way that we see ourselves and how we see other people.
Yes, I can totally understand that you're carrying all this baggage from your childhood and you've been carrying it for so long.
So there is this analogy of an invisible suitcase that I'd like to share. So imagine yourself carrying this suitcase no one else can see. In that suitcase, it contains every painful experience as rocks. And when those experiences get carried, over time, you don't even realize how heavy it's become because you're so used to it. But then that's what affects everything if not being processed properly. It will affect your energy level, to your functioning, to your relationships. So it's really important to know what it is that you carry.
Yeah. I'm just envisioning this heavy bag of rocks, and not only is it physically exhausting, but I can imagine how emotionally exhausting it is. And plus, a bag of rocks is just a bag of nothing if you think about it. It's stuff from before that has really right now no meaning, but it still weighs you down.
It still weighs you down.
So how does trauma actually affect our brains and as a result, our psychology? Because it seems like the manifestations of trauma are often involuntary reactions to situations in daily life.
Trauma can change the structure and the functioning of the brain in 3 different areas of the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. So after trauma, our amygdala can become hyperactive and is oversensitive in detecting almost everything as danger. And then it will trigger that flight or flight responses in us. It sends off that false alarm when there's no real danger. The hippocampus is the area of our brain where it processes emotions and memories. But when our amygdala is sending off that false signal, it makes it harder for that part of the brain to regulate the emotions. And it also makes it harder for us to distinguish between the past and present. And that's what a flashback is.
Oh.
A flashback is a memory in the brain, make it feels like it is happening right now. And when those two are happening, our prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain that is managing our higher reasoning, rationale, the logical part of the brain. But if our system is busy dealing with all of these false alarms and danger, it makes it harder to access that rationale and be able to calm us down.
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down. That makes a lot more sense. And in those three areas, they just seem like they're very interlinked. And what role do hormones play in trauma?
When we experience a traumatic experience or a difficult experience, our body will produce this stress cortisol that will flood into our system because it wants us to know that you got to run away from this or fight back. So when that happens, it will essentially bring stress to our body, to our system, and over time, that can really impact other systems in our body.
Right.
Physical health problems like high blood pressure, heart disease. There's a big connection with chronic pain, weakened immune system. There's also GI issues that are linked with chronic stress.
Can we elaborate now that we're getting into the health manifestations? I'm hearing blood pressure issues and GI pain. Can you share how health manifestations look in older adults?
So for older adults, unresolved trauma can speed up biological aging and physical health problems earlier than expected. These symptoms can be mistaken for memory loss or other physical health problems. People can come in with pain that cannot be explained medically, or migraines that they said, I don't know why I have these migraines where everything else in my brain looks good. So it's really important to address these unresolved traumas.
You mentioned this concept of resilience, of when things happen, how do we bounce back? How do we cope and develop the skill sets to combat this issue so that it doesn't become imprinted in our brain and destroy our amygdala and prefrontal cortex? What role does resilience play in how someone processes trauma, and how do we learn that?
Resilience, as I like to think it, is the capacity that we can develop to adapt and to navigate through difficult situations. Our psychological immune system. It is not something you're born with or born without, but it is like a toolbox that people over time gather and develop.
Can compartmentalizing, just pushing through, be considered a type of resilience? Or is there a healthier type of resilience we should strive for instead?
It can. Like my culture specifically, we were raised to power through these difficult times, right? You cannot stop going. Whatever you are feeling or experiencing, you got to keep going. And I find that, yes, people can develop resilience through that. Powering through, despite it's affecting you, is one type of resilience. Yes, it might really eat you up inside, but on the surface, you are still keep going. You still making it to work. You still trying to take care of your family. You are meeting the bare minimum. That is one type of resilience. And of course, what we want is for people to develop from there of how you can do it in a more adaptive way, in a healthier way, in a way where you feel more happy than stressed.
So there's like different types of resilience. There's different ways you can like adapt to the situation. It can be either, you could call it resilience, but it may not be a very healthy resilience. Or to your point, we're trying to create this more natural, automatic, like an autopilot where something comes at you, you're not reacting as strongly, but you've got those skill sets already weaved into your behaviors.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about how you help someone become more resilient? How do we help people through that distress tolerance?
First, I think it has to come from a place of having a good rapport. If they can't trust you or feel that you understand them, it is much harder for them to be vulnerable and share with you what they struggle with. Building that relationship and sharing what I think are helpful coping mechanisms, strategies in navigating their day-to-day stressor as well as previous traumas. And the most important thing about resilience or building resilience is through recognizing your own strength and growth in difficult situations. The knowledge, the awareness that you have been doing this, you have been surviving this, and you are making it. Because a lot of times it is really difficult to see our own strength, especially when we're drowned with stress hormones.
Right. I'm going to dig into your brain a little bit more now about the tools and the ways that you help your patients. What are some other evidence-based therapies or approaches that you use to help your patients heal from their prior negative exposures and particularly how it manifests in their lives currently?
I operate from a trauma lens. I mainly use EMDR therapy, eye movement desensitization, and reprocessing as my main approach to all my trauma work.
Eye movement
desensitization and reprocessing is a full mouth.
Yeah, no kidding.
So when someone experiences trauma, sometimes the brain can get locked with the thoughts, images, emotions, and body sensation. EMDR relies on how our brain naturally processes our daily experience during REM sleep. So we use bilateral stimulation to move that trauma and reprocess it in a way where it's adaptive and help people heal.
Is it just moving the eyes back and forth?
Well, there are different techniques.
Okay.
But eye movement was the original one. Over time, we use different techniques like tapping in the palms back and forth, or the butterfly hug technique where we would tap from left to right, back and forth, 8 times, slowly and firmly. Take a breath, open your eyes, notice how you feel. Usually you would feel better, calmer. And then do that again. Okay, I notice that I feel calmer. Do it again, another set. And you can do as many sets as you like.
I'm doing it right now.
Until you feel calm.
I do feel calmer. I feel like I'm getting a therapy session right now. This is great.
So I use that lens in conjunction with cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, skills, and mindfulness practices. I also use a lot of psychoeducation. Again, it is very important for people to understand what is it that they're dealing with so they can control it better. And after trauma work, I do a lot of empowerment, help people see their strength and utilize that strength to keep moving forward with their life. Painful experiences can be like a double-edged sword, right? It could hurt us, but if we look at it, if we can recover from it, heal from it, it can be a growth opportunity.
I love that summary. That's something I feel like we can all really hang on to every day as a mantra. Can you speak on the role of mindfulness and spirituality and how that plays in healing, either from prior traumas or ongoing chronic stress?
Mindfulness plays a very vital role in helping us connect our mind and body to the present day. Because when someone is experienced trauma, the brain can develop this coping mechanism called dissociation to get away from the present painful moment and escape to somewhere else. So over time, that cannot be good for us. Practicing mindfulness will bring that person back to the present moment.
I see a lot of patients who kind of are in their late 70s or 80s, and you can tell that they've struggled with a lot of mental health challenges throughout their lives and just emotional pain. And they often say, gosh, it's been going on for so long. Is it even worth healing from this? And I've always wondered, are there positives to healing and then growing from that somehow, even in their later years? What's the benefit to that?
Yeah. I think it's always a benefit to address trauma.
Yeah.
Of course, there's more benefit if you address it early.
Sure.
But there's no wrong time to do it, even in the later years. And from what I've seen, addressing it later in years will bring that closure and more meaning to their life.
Can you share some success stories in your practice of patients that you have helped who are doing well now and have moved forward positively from their healing experience?
I have a patient later in life from a different culture. He experienced traumas that he carried with him throughout his adult life. He finally sought therapy because he said, if I don't do this, I might lose my family.
Mm-hmm.
So we discovered that he experienced sexual molestation on a couple of different occasions, and he did not know what to do with it. So it comes out as anger and violence toward his wife, toward his oldest son. So after we worked through the first and the second experiences, he became less angry, and he apologized to both his wife and his son. And then to give back, because he was using alcohol to cope with it at the time, he developed this support group of AA, but in Spanish, to help those who went through similar experiences as him.
I guess this is a testament and an encouragement for everyone, is that it doesn't matter what you go through. There's always an opportunity for healing.
For healing and to live a better life. Mm-hmm.
So what practical lifestyle advice do you have for people suffering from mental health issues, whether it be trauma or depression or anxiety? Are there any more general recommendations you'd make?
Yeah, the basic thing that I tell people is to start out with these 3 pillars. They're like the foundation of healthy living. Sleeping well, eating enough vegetable and fruit, moving enough.
Yeah.
These are the 3 foundations that I taught to all my patients at the beginning. Of course, after that, if there are more things that feel like they're psychologically related to the previous traumas, or if there are any other ongoing stressor, then seek therapy, seek professional help. That is a place where they could start.
What about any advice for those who just feel so overwhelmed by even the idea of addressing trauma now? You know, people who've lived with it for decades and it's just so baked into their existence, they can't even imagine changing anything now in their 70s and 80s. What would you say to them?
Healing starts with self-compassion.
Yeah.
And by telling yourself that you deserve to lead a happy and healthy life just like everyone else.
Yeah.
When you're able to believe that, that's when you seek help and seek healing. And I would remind people to think that having emotional struggle is not a weakness. It's part of being human. Everyone has experienced some type of emotional pain in our life.
Yeah. I hope this message reaches a lot of people, just to remind everyone to be kind to yourself. Our last question is to really get to know you a little bit more and to understand, how do you personally age well? Like, what do you do for your mental health? And what does aging forward mean to you personally?
I thought a lot about that question. Mm-hmm. Aging well to me means focusing on what's important to me, what brings me joy and balance.
Yeah.
So every day I ask myself questions like, how am I feeling today? What do I do for recharging? Have I fed my brain what it needs? Have I feed my body what it needs to be healthy. So getting into a routine of doing that helped me create a structure of incorporating these healthy lifestyle habit that I know will serve me in the long run.
I know you also have a really great skin routine too.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today, helping us understand that there is power in healing, there is beauty in growth. And again, thank you for giving us some insight into how to do that.
Thank you so much again for having me.
So that's all for this episode. Hopefully you're feeling a little bit more informed, inspired, and empowered. If you have a topic suggestion for a future episode, you can leave us a voicemail at 507-538-6272, and we might even feature your voice on the show. On the next episode of Aging Forward, how diet and exercise affect prostate health.
I was just at our largest urology conference of the year where they were presenting on men with low-grade prostate cancer and does diet and exercise prevent progression, and found that by having a Mediterranean or heart-healthy diet, they saw less progression. Unfortunately, exercise didn't, but there's many other reasons to exercise. And I tell patients, it's probably going to be a mild effect on your prostate health by doing a heart-healthy diet, but if blood's not pumping to your prostate doesn't matter.
For more Aging Forward episodes and resources, head to mayoclinic.org/agingforward. And if you found this show helpful, please subscribe and make sure to rate and review us on your podcast app. It really helps others find our show. Thanks for listening, and until next time, stay curious and stay active.
If you're a podcast host, listen up, this one's for you. My name is Allie Jackson. I'm the host of Finding Mr. Height, a dating and relationship podcast that I've been doing for 4 years now, sharing my positive and practical approach to dating that's built on my own life experience. And I wanted to share another experience that I've had, my secret behind monetizing my show. It's called Red Circle, and I was just telling my colleague about how much I love their platform. With Red Circle, not only am I getting a seamless hosting experience, but I also love the support I receive in ad sales. It's not just typical ad sales either. It's targeted opportunities based on my show and my life. And the platform is super simple. You just set your preferences and Red Circle matches you with sponsors that align with your show. You can vet every opportunity and their platform gives you great analytics. More recently too, my Red Circle team has brought me opportunities outside of my podcast on social media to really augment the podcast partnerships, bring them full circle. I just can't recommend them enough. If you want to give it a try, go to redcircle.com to get your free trial. That's redcircle.com for a free trial.